So let me draw up on top. I didn't block the top and bottom. So I'm going to have a router here connected to a router here. We'll call this router 1 and this router 2. What is confusing about how the curriculum on 245 portrays it is, do you notice how there's a PPP authentication PAP on both routers? And remember what I said is that that command configures who is the authenticator. In this case, there's 2 authenticators, right? And so it's kind of confusing here because the way that the curriculum portrays it is we're actually authenticating in both directions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 colors to kind of show you which commands go with what. So on router 1, we'll have interface, I'm just going to use S0. And over on router 2, we'll have interface S0. Ah, shoot, I'm sorry. On router 1, we're going to type the command in caps, and I'm abbreviating them here, PPP. So what is that? What is router 1 going to do when you add the command in caps PPP? During the LCP setup, it's going to send a message over here that says, I'm sorry. Boy, I'm butchering this. PPP off PAP. That's going to send a message to the other side that says, I want PAP authentication. Okay? Now that's technically not the authentication handshake yet. That's just the LCP message that says, I want you to authenticate to PAP. So what do we need on the other side? What we need on the other side to answer that is a PPP PAP sent username R1, R2, and then I'm gonna wrap it around password Cisco. Okay, so that command, when we get this, I can't call it a challenge. When we get that, hey, I want you to authenticate, this router is going to say, oh, it wants PAP authentication. I have a command that says send the username equal to R2, password equal to Cisco. So far, so good? Now, what do I need back on this side then? So this side receives it, which means I need a username command for R2 password Cisco. Okay? So now I got I challenged. I said, hey, I need you to authenticate PAP. Router 2 sent me a message back that says, okay, here's my username and password. I have a username and password defined. It matches, so I send back accept. Make sense? Okay. Now let's finish out the config that we see on 245. I'll use another color. We also have PPP authentication PAP on that side as well, right? So that means that that command is going to trigger a I want PAP off the other direction. So that means over here we need a PPP PAP sent username, and we'll send router 1 password Cisco. So then that will cause us to send username R1, password Cisco. So what do we need on this side over here? We need something to validate it against. We need a username R1, password Cisco. Right? We validate it, it passes, we send back and accept when we're done. So do you see how the way they have it portrayed here, we are actually authenticating in both directions. There's two authentication processes happening. The one that's controlled by the blue commands and the one controlled by the red commands. Does that make sense? I'm going to get rid of this just to clean this up. I'm going to get rid of this just so it's a little cleaner. But the blue was authenticating this way, and the red was authenticating that way. Red commands are telling router 2 who we are. The blue commands are telling 1 who we are. Does that make sense? What happens is people come away from this slide thinking that all of this has to be done to make this work, but it's really two things. When you dial your ISP, you're only doing one. If router 1 was your ISP, you're only dialing into them and authenticating to them, right? They know who you are. You don't really care who they are. You dial their number. You hope you get them, right? The problem with this, and why this is a good practice to do it the way they have it, but you just got to understand it's two different directions. If I can dial my ISP from my router, meaning I'm connected to either ISDN or an analog phone line, if I can dial them, what else can happen?
Somebody else can dial them.
Someone else could dial you, right? That was a big problem back in the dial-up and ISDN days, is everybody was really good about authenticating to their ISPs, but what a lot of people didn't realize is your devices, if you misconfigured them, could also answer the phone when people called you and could potentially get into your router. So this is by all means the way you would want to do it. If you're in a dial-on-demand ISDN environment where you're dialing your headquarters, you still really want to authenticate your headquarters too, just in case somebody else ever dialed into you.
Well, this was kind of the case where people would dial into other people and have them do the long-distance charges.
Well, you need another line, you know, because you couldn't, if you were dialed into them, you really couldn't use their line.
Right.
But yeah, that was a possibility. But this is the right way to do it, don't get me wrong. But you need to understand the red and the blue, because when you go to troubleshoot it, you kind of have to know what goes with what. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could, if you're a one directional, you could turn your home ISDN modem off and not answer, right?
You could, and you could do that for analog as well. And you should. If you don't need to answer, you shouldn't answer. So, but that could be accidentally flipped the other way, right? Okay, so that makes sense to everybody? Those are the only commands that we need to know for PAP. Okay, let's jump to chat now.